We welcome Reverend Joanne.
Thank you. Thank you for that music and the reading. And Reverend Debbie, thank you for everything you do all the time. So it's August, and the theme for August is the fear and the furious. And really what we're talking about this month is we're talking about putting fear and anger to work for us, not just be controlled by it and afraid of it, but how can we use fear as a guidepost to get us to a better place? Instead of being a threat to our peace, it can be a guide to our good and more good. From the science of mind perspective, we realize that fear is not always generated from the external, but we got a lot of stuff going on up here that generates our fear. And when I was reading about this, I thought to myself, when I was a kid, it was probably, I don't know, 9, 10 years old. I lived on a farm. Across the road from us, there was another farm. A good friend of mine, Sharon, lived, and her dad, Pete, Sharon and me and my cousin Katie would play whist. So it's dark at night. I'm over at Pete's house, and we're playing whist. And on the radio, we heard that in Sandstone there was a mental institute. It's what the prison is today, but at that time it was a mental institute, and someone had escaped. This was on the radio, so it was a big deal. And I didn't really know what that meant, but it sure seemed scary to me because Sandstone's not that far away from where we were sitting. And so by the time the end of the night came, I'd kind of worked myself up into a little, that's pretty scary because this guy could be anywhere and God only knows what they do. I didn't know what that meant. And so Katie lived a little further away, so Pete would give her a ride home. Sharon, we lived very close to each other, but she would walk me halfway home, and then we'd run like crazy to get to our respective homes so that nothing would get us. So she's walked me halfway. I'm on my way down this dirt road, and I see something in the ditch up ahead. And I think, could be this guy, coming out of the ditch. Could be the mental patient. And I thought, no, it isn't. It's a bush. It's a bush, and I'm not going to be afraid of a bush. I'm just going to trudge along. But the closer I got to that bush, all of a sudden that bush started coming out of the ditch. And I stood there, frozen in fear, and screamed. Now, by this time, Pete was already back from taking Katie home, and so he just drove up to where I was, put me in the car. As we watched the dog trot across the road. But it was just like it was out of my hands. That fear absolutely took me over, terrorized me. And I've never forgotten that because I was really afraid. But again, there was nothing externally. It was all my internal stuff that brought this up. And science of mind teaches us this, that our thoughts and beliefs create our reality. So if we're real afraid like that, we're probably going to see a bush coming out of the ditch. Come on in. So as we dissolve these fears, we can then make a better connection with our inner power. We can live with this fear, or we can say, that's not real. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to connect with that power which is within me, that very power that created everything and everyone. I go through this when I drive here on mornings like this. I tell myself, okay, I know there's one power in the universe, and I've got this new look in my head now of the universe with all the stars, and it's so big, it's unfathomable. And then I think of, then here's our Milky Way, here's our solar system, here's Venus and Jupiter or whatever they are, and here's this little third rock from the sun, Earth. Just a speck when you think about that vastness, just a speck. And then we are specks on that speck. And yet, how wonderful is it that that Creator that created everything and everyone still experiences life in, through, and as us. As insignificant as we seem, we aren't insignificant because that higher power experiences life in, through, and as us. To me, this is it's just a way to get me grounded in what we do when we say when we pray. We pray, I know there's one power in the universe, and I know I'm one with it. What a powerful thought that is. So we don't want to allow these fears that we have to be stumbling blocks to us, but we want to open up so that we can use these fears and say, what can I learn from this? How can I return to the truth and know that everything is really in divine right orders? I know that's difficult, because I go through this like everybody else too. When you're having some problems, it's really kind of difficult to say, yeah, I know everything is in divine right order, because it doesn't seem so divine at the moment. And yet when we allow our hearts to soften and open ourselves to that goodness, our lives can really be enhanced in a wonderful way. So this morning I'm going to be talking 3 different points. We're going to talk about, number 1, we honor fear by listening without giving it the wheel. You know how that is. You've had days like that, right? Where you all of a sudden you're not in charge at all. Something else has taken over and you're upset, you're mad, nothing's good. What we want to do is listen to our fears and our concerns without turning over that power. And one of the things that I've learned is that one of the fears that's really common is this, that idea of being an imposter. Anybody relate to this? You got your job, or you're a mother, or you're whatever you are, and you kind of think to yourself, I wonder when I'll get found out. And when I was a stockbroker, I actually used to refer to the clothes that I put on sometimes as my stockbroker costume. A costume. That's sometimes the way I felt. And one day I was talking to my manager, and he was a glory boy. He did everything right. He was so smart. Everything he did was good. He got his license, and then he's in the car. He was going all over the state, putting on seminars, opening accounts. He was just absolutely phenomenal. Became a manager. And so I was having this conversation with him one day, a casual conversation, and I said something about, sometimes I feel like, they're going to find me out. Because we loved our job. We loved what we did. It was great, and yet sometimes I thought, is this real? Is this real? Can this really be happening to me? And he said, Joanne, there isn't a morning that I wake up when I don't think to myself, is this the day they're going to find out who I am, that I'm an imposter? He wasn't an imposter, but he had that same fear. And just for the fun of it, I looked up some other statistics about people who were suffered with this imposter syndrome. One of them, Albert Einstein. Of course, he never did much, right? For all the contributions he made to physics, he often felt like he was a fraud, and he was afraid people were going to find out he's not as smart as everybody thought he was. Albert Einstein. Maya Angelou. You know who Maya Angelou is? She, poet and author. And she felt like an imposter, and she believed her success was luck. She did not give herself credit. She thought she might be an imposter. Serena Williams. She's a fairly good tennis player. And yet she was always feeling like, do I really deserve all this praise that I'm getting for being among the best athletes ever? She just didn't feel that. She felt like she might be an imposter. There's a woman named Sheryl Sandberg, and she was the chief operating officer of Meta or Facebook for like 14 years. And she also had this imposter syndrome that she thought she was unworthy of this. She was worth $2 billion and thought she might be an imposter. So there's a lot of these fears that they're, where do they come from? They just come from inside here. Tom Hanks. I mean, how many Academy Awards has the guy got? And he was always fearing he'd be exposed as not as deserving of all these accolades as he got. So we all have these kind of irrational fears that we allow our minds to conjure up. And the thing that we can do is, rather than judging ourselves and thinking, I'm not good enough, we can just answer this gentle call to compassion for ourselves, knowingness that, yes, that's okay. I have this higher power within me, so why shouldn't that higher power be able to lift me to good things in my life? And so this fear that we have might be an invitation to move on to a path where we are thinking higher and better thoughts, where we're being nicer to ourselves, and we're, instead of fear being the boogeyman, fear can be that wise teacher for us. So that's the first point. We honor fear by listening without giving fear the wheel. The second point is fear deepens our capacity for compassion. And I've been thinking about this recently, about how powerful it is when we're having something going on in our life, whether it's we're judging somebody or judging ourselves or fearing something, being angry about something. The idea, how wonderful it is, how powerful it is to say to God as we understand it, my higher power, and say, I am willing for my heart to be softened. I am willing to love instead of worry. I'm willing to love instead of being resentful. Allow our hearts to be softened. That, I think, then we can be more empathetic with people. We can be more compassionate. There's a quote from the Tao Te Ching, that's Lao Tzu's book. It goes like this: water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. As a rule, whatever is fluid, soft, and yielding will overcome what is hard and rigid. This is another paradox. What is soft is strong. I think about the Grand Canyon, and you get that river running way down below it. Well, what happened there? That river ground away at those rocks for years and years. So we can learn that by releasing fear, we can have a sense of ease. We can have this compassion in our heart. And while compassion might seem like a gentle thing, it really can be considered a form of strength for us. Compassion can be a form of strength. So the third point I want to make is fear invites creative growth in community. Our communities, we often have the same kind of fears. My dream group yesterday, we were talking about, all the things that as a group, these are the things we worry about, this, that, and the next thing. And oftentimes in a community, we have these same worries. The fear of the unknown, what's going to happen, how can we make some changes? It gets a little scary. And the idea is, if we can face these fears, we can loosen fear's grip on us. If we acknowledge that these fears are there, and then we can understand that it's not the fear that has a hold of us. There can be many, many other possibilities for us in our life. We don't have to sit in this fear of whatever is going on in our lives. this fear can then be a catalyst for some change where we can work together as a unit. I'm thinking of, remember Hurricane Katrina? That was in 2005. And I think I read something like 1,600 people died. It was horrendous. And of course, you know, it happens and government help doesn't come for days. And so people were, you know, friends, neighbors, strangers were helping each other. What do you need? Do you need a place to stay? Let me get you to a safe place. You need some water. This is what people were doing for each other in a big way. It was a real grassroots. And what an example of, you know, we can think about how horrible life is and how terrible these things are, but when push comes to shove, a lot of people will step up. I think a lot of people really like when you go to them and say, can you help me with something? You know, we're not very good at, I don't think we're very trained at saying, okay, now let's see, how can I help you today? I don't think that's what we're trained at. But if somebody says to me, you know, I really need your help here. Could you give me a ride? Could you do this? Can you help me with this? I think we're happy to do it. And in cases like Katrina, that was certainly the case. Or last winter with this business where kids were afraid to go to school, people were afraid to go to work, and people stepped up, and I think most of them worked through the schools to help alleviate these things, to make sure people had food and that they could get to where they needed to be. So being in the presence of fear is not a failure. That's not something that we have to say, oh no, I'm so afraid, I'm a bad person. But it can be a signpost. It can be a little warning. You're afraid of this? What are the other possibilities here? So we know we don't run from fear. We reclaim our power. And we know that when we do that, we connect with that power within us, that very power that created everything and everyone. We connect with that. We can gently embrace the good that is there for us and go forward. And instead of having this fear stuff be a stumbling block for us, it can actually help us learn our truth again and to help us get in touch with that higher power which is within us. So there's a couple things that I'm going to mention and suggest today. One of them is I'm going to suggest that you reflect on a time when fear actually did guide you to growth. And I certainly, when I thought about this, I certainly thought about my first marriage. I was in an abusive marriage, and I was afraid. And it wasn't all up here. I had reason to be afraid. And what happened as a result of that fear is I had to make some changes. I used that fear as a guidepost to get the heck out of that marriage. And that's what I did. So sometimes we can use these fears as that guidepost. So, you know, maybe sit in meditation and think of one thing that you have used fear for that got you into a better place. Another thing you might want to think about for homework is notice where fear might be holding you back, and sit with that for a little bit. Where is fear holding me back? And just sit with it. You don't have to solve it, but I think when we acknowledge something, we can never tell what's going to happen down the road. You know, I think some of these saints over the past, you know, said, you know, you do your prayer work, the answer might come when you're doing dishes 2 hours later. And that's the way it is with this kind of stuff. When we acknowledge our fear, the answer may come later. I'm going to share with you something that I just read yesterday in our Science of Mind magazine for August, just relating to this very thing. It says, if you're unsure how to handle your fear, try using visualization to provide perspective. Start by cultivating a calm, meditative state. Close your eyes and picture your fear in your mind's eye. Kind of get a picture of what that fear might look like, what color it might be. It may be a person, it might be an object. In your mind, recognize this as your fear and imagine yourself standing next to it. See yourself as bigger than your fear. If your fear is larger than you, or you're only a little bigger, make yourself grow and your fear shrink. I mean, these are things we can do with our minds. They're great ideas. They work. Remember, you are made of the same creative energy as the universe. You are connected to the source of everything, and nothing is greater or wiser than the source within you. We all have that. That power of the very source that created everything is within us. Feel as much as you can how large you are and how small your fear is. Look down on it, knowing you are a mountain and it is as tiny as a piece of sand in the larger scheme of things. You know, again, we're playing games and they work. This is the kind of stuff we can use our minds for. When fear rears its head in your daily life, remember this visualization. Bring to mind how it felt to be so large and strong in comparison to the smallness of your fear. This is God knowing itself. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "Do one thing every day that scares you." What nice advice that is. So trust that you don't need to be fearless. You just need to be willing to move forward. So I would invite you now to get relaxed, and I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment, which is an affirmative prayer around these words that I just shared with you. Just take a deep breath and relax right where you're at. Nowhere else to be right now. And I know there is that one power in the universe, that power that created everything and everyone, that big universe thing. And I know that that very power that created everything that is the very power that experiences life in, through, and as its creation. That's why I can speak these powerful words from that place within me. And even though in the past I might have sometimes given the wheel to my fear, rather than let it guide me on a path that serves me, even though I've done that in the past, I now choose to see fear as a gentle call to remember who I am. I'm a child of God. I am a vehicle for my higher power to experience life in, through, and as me. Fear can become my teacher. I allow fear to soften my heart and create empathy and compassion and kindness. As I release fear, I have a sense of ease. As we face challenges in our community, we allow fear to serve as a catalyst for opportunities to unite us and to meet these challenges together. So in gratitude for the lessons of using fear as a teacher, in gratitude for my higher power and its pleasure in showering its creation with all good, in gratitude for our loving community here, I release these words to that beneficent conspiracy which does the work, so it is.